Steph, good morning to you. All right, Ontario's teachers' unions calling for mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for eligible staff and students, while the TDSB releasing more cautious set of rules to follow compared to the rest of the province.
We are still confirming other pieces ahead of the school year, but so far we can tell people that masks will be required for all students JK to 12, not just 1 to 12, as indicated by the ministry. With regard to lunch, I can tell you that elementary students will continue to eat lunch in their classrooms. As far as recess, they'll be continuing to take breaks and be outside with cohorts while physical distancing.
And as you heard there, these guidelines slightly different from the directives coming from the province. Ryan Bird, who you just heard from, saying that Toronto Public Health recommending extra safety measures because of a higher risk of spread. The city's Associate Medical Officer of Health saying its critical schools don't close this year.
Our goal for this coming school year is no school interruptions. We certainly do want to see children in-person learning. We know that there are many, many benefits beyond public health benefits for having children learning in school.
Now, coming up here at 8 o'clock, we will be joined by the province's top doctor, Kieran Moore. We're going to get his take on some of these stricter guidelines, as well as what is ahead in the next few weeks before kids go back. Now, also coming up, just after 7 o'clock, Mayor John Tory checks back in with us for his weekly check-in on BT. We're going to talk about everything, the latest developments fighting this pandemic, what he thinks it's going to take to get the Raptors playing back home, a lot to chat about. Well, 2 members of provincial parliament could face expulsion from caucus for refusing to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Sources say Christina Midas from Scarborough and Rick from the area are the 2 MPPs in question. Today is the deadline to fulfill Premier Doug Ford's order requiring all PC caucus members to get vaccinated. The Premier's office says they expect this from every MPP because their work requires daily interaction with the public. Meanwhile, we're following this. Ontario PCs are under fire for mailing out what's being described as fake invoices. Have a look at this. So these letters sent to some Ontario residents in what appears to be a fundraising effort for the upcoming election. However, as you can see from the top right there, it looks like it's designed to make supporters believe they're owing money here. The NDP has made a formal complaint with Elections Ontario, saying it could be in violation of the province's Elections Act. The Ford government has not responded to multiple requests for comment by CityNews. We have reached out here on Breakfast Television as well. We'll let you know if we hear anything back. Let's get to the federal election now, and it's going to look very different, of course, because of the pandemic. So there are some new guidelines from Elections Canada added in to keep voters safe. Here's City News reporter Shaoli Lee.
Now, I know that Canadians are used to getting complete results on election night, but it will be different for this election.
Elections Canada says due to the huge number of expected mail-in ballots, it could take 2 to 5 days for every vote to be counted. Elections Canada says that in a normal election year, they'd get around 250,000 mail-in ballots, including those from overseas Canadians and people in the armed forces. But this year, Elections Canada has ordered over 5 million mail-in ballots.
The count of regular ballots on ordinary polling day and advance polls will be completed on the night of the election as usual. However, the count of mail-in ballots will start after Election Day once all the mail-in ballots that electors have dropped off at polling stations have been returned and integrity checks have been performed.
For people voting in person, Chief Electoral Officer Stéphane Perreault says you can expect to see something similar to a grocery store. Social distancing, hand sanitizer, and masking if the local health authority requires it. But Perreault wasn't able to explain what will happen if someone refuses to wear a mask by choice.
And you have a medical reason not to wear a mask, then you will not be denied the right to vote. But if it's just a matter of personal choice and the mask is mandatory in the jurisdiction in which you're voting, then we will apply those rules.
Elections Canada also says it's not making vaccination mandatory for polling workers. While Perreault says he expects many workers will be vaccinated anyway, he says polling stations will be tightly managed and it'll be easier to control spread.
The recommendations so far do not include making vaccination mandatory. And as I indicated, we are recruiting ordinary Canadians, serving ordinary Canadians, and they will encounter them in locations that are highly controlled, much more controls than the kind of encounters you see at the grocery store every day.
Now, Perot also says they need Canadians to step up and work polling stations. Elections Canada needs around 250,000 people. But in 2019, a year without a pandemic, they only got around 230,000. In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
Well, embattled Huawei exec Meng Wanzhou will have to wait 2 whole months before hearing a judge's ruling in her extradition case. Legal arguments in Meng's hearing concluded yesterday, 2.5 years after she stepped into a Canadian courtroom. A BC Supreme Court judge must now decide whether to extradite the Huawei CFO to the U.S., where she'd face fraud charges. The judge says a ruling, again, will not be announced until October 21st. Canada's relations with China have deteriorated throughout these legal proceedings. Okay, your time right now is 6:10. More news on your way. Coming up next, Canada's record high inflation rate has economists sounding the alarm. Why prices might not drop anytime soon. Mike Eppel, he's next.